You're listening to the Fantasy Fling Podcast. Take a break from the season-long commitment and join us for a Friday fling as we give you the newest and hottest DFS deals, preview the DFS main slate, and take the dreadful walk of shame. Here are your hosts, Brandon and Eric.
Welcome in, everyone. It's Making a Milli, our Milli Maker special. It's week 8. Eric, how you doing on this Saturday afternoon?
Hey, I'm good, man. I just got back from daughter's soccer game. They did really well. Got a busy day filled up, and then football tomorrow, so I can't complain. How about you?
I'm good, man. And your wife's out of town. You're taking the daughter trick-or-treating tomorrow. Are you going to be trick-or-treating as well? Or just her?
Not this time. Not this time. Nope. Doing a corn maze later tonight or later today, and then trick-or-treating, but not I won't be on the walk of shame twice for that.
Typical father stuff, not shameful Halloween father stuff.
Right?
Yeah. Well, let's get to it, bro. We're talking the Milli Maker week 8, of course, but the main reason that we decided to do this show, Milli Maker just fascinates me. Being able to roll the dice every week and have the chance to make life-changing money could be thrilling. And I certainly like to have some skin in the game in this contest each and every week. That said, over the past year and a half, we have analyzed the winning Milli Maker lineups. And there are some definite trends that are consistent. And obviously, if you're cognizant of that when you construct your lineups, you have a much better chance than the average Joe. And by the way, despite what people think, this isn't the hardest GPP to win. On average, it's about less than 300,000 that play this every week, which, yeah, it's a lot, but the play action sees over 600,000 entries most weeks. It's certainly more winnable than the play action, which you see lower scores every single week to take down the Milli Maker than the play action. Will we ever win it? Probably not. Is it winnable? Yes. If you correlate with stacks, you use proper leverage, you pay attention to positional pricing, averages, and obviously have that ceiling that can, hit 250 plus in your lineup, you can win. In fact, we have guys over at Dfs Army who have taken down $1 million contest more than once. By the way, I just want to read a tweet real quick that I saw today from, I believe it was Daily Overlay. So what they do is they analyze the experts in DFS, and they basically are going to rank them based on their consistency, how many of their subscribers continue to finish the top of the leaderboards and whatnot. NFL DFS expert overall grades through week 7. DFS Army Domination Station leads all experts, followed by Hallow Rook, Rotoballer, and Rotogrinders. Their optimized scores are number 1. So why are you not using this? Head over to dfsarmy.com for a premium subscription and use code FANTASYFLING for 10% off. That said, let's take a look back. If we're playing the Milli Maker, we got to look back before we can go forward. So the week 7 Milli Maker lineup. Eric, I take it you didn't win it last week. Your name's not Megan Joy on Draftkings.
I did not. Yeah. But one thing that's awesome about the DFS and what we're doing here is it pulls you in when you're like 1 or 2 players away from making really good money. It just kind of sucks you in.
Absolutely. I've had, as you'll see, a lot of times you're on the right stack. It's a combination of, hitting the right stack and the right one-offs. If you're on a bunch of one-offs that are great and you're like, shit, if I just stacked the right game, I would have won. I feel like that can be more defeating than, just hitting the right stack and then, having 3, 4, 5 one-offs, whatever it is, and not hitting those. But let's take a look at actually what won it last week. So it was a week of blowouts, which you wonder how that's going to go for stacking purposes. In fact, I saw a tweet from Brett Coleman, perfectly summed up week 7. If my math is correct, the average margin of victory across NFL today is 20.8 points. Never seen this many blowouts in one Sunday before. In DFS terms, this undoubtedly meant that it was a great day for the right team stacks, not so much for game stacks. So the week 7 DFS Graveyard, it was full of KC and Tennessee stacks. Everyone loved that game. We thought it was going to blow up. It did not. These stacks were dead before the afternoon games even started. Got 57-point game total. Never had a chance KC struggles to move the ball with turnovers and whatnot, and just Mahomes running for his life, and they were quickly buried. So that said, the Milli Maker would clearly have a winner with only team stacks then, right? Well, it's a different beast, so it's not really how that goes. But let's look at the winning lineup. So what we had was Matthew Stafford, DeAndre Swift, and obviously they're no longer on the same team anymore, as Stafford's in Los Angeles. But Stafford, DeAndre Swift, Damian Harris, Cooper Kupp, who is on Stafford's team, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin, Moreau, Van Jefferson, and the Bucs D. So as far as stacking, this was quarterback, wide receiver, and an opposing running back. So actually a game stack did make its way into the Milli Maker last week. It's Stafford with 30 points, Kupp with over 40 points, Van Jefferson with 14 points, Swift 28 points. This is a total, this stack, this game stack, 113 points, average 28.3 points and per person, and then fantasy points per dollar is about 4.47x. This is definitely the thickest stack we had seen all year in the winning Milli Maker lineup. This is the first time this year that we have seen a wide receiver double stack that was brought back with a running back. The Rams-Lions game did have one of the higher totals on the slate, and Stafford going against his own old team was obviously attractive. You know, it fits the narrative. And then, you know, even though most people were questioning if the Lions could actually do enough for this game to be stack worthy, we talked about on the Fantasy Fling podcast, Swift's usage. He's like the wide receiver one at this point for Goff. He's also getting carries too. So he got 13 rushes, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 144 all-purpose yards, and a tutty. And even in a negative game script, Swift has high upside most weeks because of his receiving ability. Stacks continue to be prevalent even in blowouts, as we saw. These stacks, we did see they combined for 162 points. We did have another stack with Godwin in that lineup in the Bucs D. So a lot of stacks, of course, and that one was kind of obvious, right? The Bears are a bad team, and you know Brady's Bucs, they're defending champs, so you pretty much saw a mismatch and a curb stomping coming. Right?
I didn't think it would be that bad.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be that bad. That was pretty good. That was over like by the second quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, Godwin, it's funny because Godwin is chalky, but in a smash spot when Antonio Brown and Gronk out. What was good about this lineup is stacking Godwin with the rostered Bucs defense. They're only 2.5% really. So, and it was a great game environment. So, people always think stack running back in defense. You can stack wide receivers in defense too if you think that basically, one team is going to flex on the other team so much. Like Brady is going to go out, they're going to score a bunch of points, and then their defense is just going to wreak havoc like they did because they got great pass rushers, and obviously Fields holds onto the ball long, and his offensive line isn't very good, and they're not really running offense to a skill set. So if you think about it from a football term, it's not really surprising, right?
Yeah. Definitely not.
For sure. Overall roster percentage, one of the trickiest parts of building a large field GPP lineup is the overall roster percentage, right? So, for example, on Making a Milli last week, late Friday, I had a construction was about 99% in total ownership projections. And by Sunday morning, this had basically gone up to like 150%. So I basically scrapped the lineup that I had. But the lineup that you will see that took down the Milli Maker last week, Megan Joy, she had no such issues with too much roster percentage, as her total was like 91.5%. And that's actually 6 out of 7 weeks of the Milli Maker. We've seen total roster percentage being under 95%. So something to keep in mind when you're building your lineups, for sure. Leverage. I alluded to it, but the Bucs D, they were a great pivot off of the chalky Cardinals D. Some of the other leverage plays, McLaurin, Moreau, and Van Jefferson. Moreau, I don't know if it's Moreau, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but
Moreau, Buster Moreau.
Moreau. Okay, you're a Raiders fan. You know what it is, right?
I do.
But these guys were direct leverage off of chalky Adams, Devonta Adams at 19%. Ben Jefferson, for example, was only $100 more than Rashad Bateman. He also outscored him and came in at 12% less ownership. So, some ways to get leverage on the field, of course. And then Moreau, he was a last-minute lineup decision for many, but not really in the Milli Maker. I was surprised to see that because people are talking about how he was, going to be chalky bit in the Milli Maker. He was 2% ownership, so quite shocking.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? You're a Raiders fan. We talked about it last week. I thought Waller was in a smash spot, and I think he would have absolutely crushed, but he didn't play.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Moreau is anywhere near as talented as Waller, but I think it's just the way that the offense has been built. I mean, that was Gruden's offense, even though he's not running it, and it kind of, it was built for Waller, and I think they decided to kind of stick with it and see what they have in Moreau. Seemed to work out. He seemed pretty good. I mean, he's definitely not as good as Waller, but he seemed capable.
Yeah.
Seemed pretty decent.
For sure. Well, pricing, we're almost through here, but pricing is important, specifically when you're looking at fantasy points per dollar perspective. We've seen, there has not been a winning lineup that has scored, at least had one player that's had less than 6x in the Milli Maker. So one thing we've noticed, we really haven't had a ton of studs in the Milli Maker winning lineup. I believe Adams has made it there. Cup has made it there several times, but over like 9,000, you haven't seen it much. Really, even over 8,000, the only guys that I can remember just off the top of my head, Henry, Adams, and Cup. So Cup was the top guy this last week. His price continues to climb, but he's still smashing. So 8,400, he got 4.83x. Stafford was 7,100, he got 4.24x. McLaurin was 6,900, he got 4x. Swift, 6,000, 4.73x. Godwin, 5,900. Harris, 4.9x at 5,700. So both those two are pretty similar. Buxty, 4,000. You do pay up for defenses in a GPP of this size, as we've seen often. They're 4,000, but they still got 5.25x on their salary. And then Ben Jefferson, 4x. And then Moreau, 7.2x. So he was the guy over 6x to take down the Milli Maker this past week. I've been saying it, man. I got to get rid of my bartending gig on Sundays because it's messing up my GPPs, trying to get leverage on the field, last second news. You got to have Sunday mornings off. Plus, we live in Colorado, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, so it's like that's when the first game started, as opposed to living on the East Coast. You got to 1. So
yeah.
But through 7 weeks of the Milli Maker, we've had a winning lineup with at least one position that produced 6x on the salary. What you normally see in the total will be between like 4.5 to as high as like 5.5 on just like the overall fantasy points per dollar. And then again, we continue to see higher price defenses winning the Milli Maker. This was the highest one we had seen with 4,000. But overall ceiling, that's the last thing you need to consider, I guess, in constructing your lineup. But really, it's the most important thing. So normally, most weeks, you're going to need about 250 points, which over 9 roster positions is an average of 27.5, 27.7 exactly. So you need guys who can score way more than, a few studs who can go for like 30 to 40 points, essentially. Stafford, for example, can do 30 to 35. Swift is 25 to 30. Damian Harris, he's going to be on kind of the lower end so far with his ceiling 20 to 28, but Kupp going to go off for 40 plus. Godwin can do 30 to 40. McLaurin can get about 35 points. So these are some of the guys that can do enough to kind of carry everyone else with them, because you always have to consider, does this roster construction have enough of a ceiling to score 250 plus? So that's what got it done last week. Let's take a look at week 8, Eric. Let's look forward. Who do we like? I will hand it over to you. We'll start with the top Vegas totals to target for stacks.
Yeah, definitely. This is kind of adding on to what we did on our Wednesday podcast, where we talk about the cash buildups, the cash lineups we build. But At the top is the Tennessee-Indy game, which is kind of surprising that we both talked about this. Indy's the favorite, projected for 27 points. Tampa Bay, New Orleans, 49.5-point game. I know Tampa is amazing, but I could see that game kind of being more of a dud. New Orleans has a pretty good D. I guess it depends on if you can stop Brady, which is almost impossible at times. But that's 49.5 with Tampa, 27 points team total. You got Chargers and Patriots, same thing, 49.5-point over under, with the Chargers being a 27-point total team. And then the Bills and Dolphins, I'm kind of surprised this one's so low. I thought this would be in the 50s for sure, because it feels like Buffalo puts up 30 some odd points every single game. I guess the defense is so good too. That's probably the reason being. But Buffalo, Miami is a 49.
They have that, and team total. They have a 31.5 team total. It's definitely the largest. So they think they're going to put up 31 for sure, but they just don't know.
Yeah, right. They're just saying Miami's going to put up 17.
Yeah,
which I guess is possible. I mean, that probably have the best stack of offense and defense in the league. Yeah. And then the game, Philly and Detroit at 48.5, with Philly, the 25.5-point team total.
Yeah.
That could be, neither one. I don't know. That could be a pretty high scoring game. Neither one of the defenses is that great.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure. So that's a sneaky high team total, because you look at Philly and Detroit, you're like, okay, Detroit, Goff, not very good. I mean, his number one receiver is arguably his running back, Swift. And, if not, then it's Khalif Raymond, probably. And then Philly, you're like, well, we talked about it. Hurts isn't really that good of a quarterback. He's good for fantasy purposes, but as far as an NFL quarterback, he's not really good. So can he push the pace for this game to, go over, be one of the more high-scoring games on the slate? Because most of the scoring comes in garbage time. So it's a little surprising, but it's a sneaky high game total. And then another one I would say, which didn't make the list, but I've certainly targeted in stacks, is Carolina and Atlanta. Darnold hasn't played good recently, but versus Atlanta, they don't have a great pass defense. So maybe he gets back on track this week.
Yeah, something to keep in mind in that game. And I don't know if he still has it or not, but this is the game that Stephon Gilmore could be activated for.
Okay.
He is. I mean, he was, the player of the year. So he's a stud. I don't know if New England knew something, that's why they let him go. But he could help make Carolina's defense a little bit better.
Most definitely. Yeah, Belichick, he, as far as like a long-term outcome on players, he will let a guy go a year too early as opposed to a year too late. That said, that doesn't mean that some of the players he's let go haven't had, great seasons after letting him go. Wes Walker in Denver, for example. So, we'll see how it goes. We'll see.
The biggest one is Brady.
Yeah, of course.
The biggest example ever.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't look great, but he wasn't surrounded with any weapons. So, I mean.
Yeah. Well, Brady wanted out. So.
Yeah, that helps too.
It was a little different, but you're right. Like, it's a little bit of ego there, right? Like, obviously you have Brady and you should pretty much just do whatever the man wants. And coaches who have big egos, they have sometimes an issue with that. I mean, you look back, actually, a lot of people, if you didn't live in Denver, you didn't know this, but for example, Elway and Shanahan kind of had a falling out, and that's why Elway retired the year that he did, as opposed to coming back for a repeat, for maybe the three-peat, because he definitely, skills-wise, he wasn't quite done. So you just never know. Sometimes it's like a marriage where two people are kind of big-headed, at some point it's going to come to an end. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's get to it. As far as our lineup construction for Week 8, Eric, Paul actually, dude, he's been killing it in our throwing down of the gauntlet between the three of us. I don't know what it is about Paul. He just likes to get in my head. So he's been winning our little gauntlet the past month of the season. So he got first this week, but he ghosted us this week. I guess the spooky season. It's Halloween tomorrow. So he ghosted us. He's not here today. He probably drank too much last night. He says he's not feeling well. We just got a text. That means he drank a half bottle of whiskey last night. So that said, that makes me first this week. So I don't have to roll. I've crunched the numbers. I went over to the DFS Army domination station. I went to the optimizer. I looked at who I want this week. So you're going to be the one to roll. And then you're going to start building your lineup. And then I'm going to go with who I like in the Milli Maker.
Okay. So which one did you choose so I don't end up taking it?
So I have.
Or which stack, which game lineup so I don't end up.
A Tennessee and Indy game,
okay,
which should be the number one stack. So you can roll anything from 2 to 5.
All right. 4. That's the Buffalo
4.
Miami.
All right. Well,
that plays. I kind of was looking at that stack. I was looking at that anyway, so I like it.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm probably not rolling it out of the Milli Maker, but I'm going to do a lot of tournaments, and I will be heavy on that Miami Buffalo game. It's juicy. I like it. I like it from a lot of angles.
Yeah.
So I'll go with mine. I went over to DFS Army, and again, number 1 right now in 2021 season with their optimals, with the domination station. So basically, I go here and I'm looking at different games I want to stack. So I put in my stacks, and then I look at some studs that I like for that week, and I'll give them a like in the domination station or a love if I really like them, and it adds like points when the optimizer runs the optimals. So I will do that. I'll also look at some sleepers, and and it's looking at ceiling projections. With something like this, we're looking at ceiling projections. We're looking at fantasy points per dollar, and then we're also looking at roster percentage. The good thing about it is I will go into projected roster percentage, and I will have a cap of like 100%. Just based on averages to win the Milli Maker. I'll make anywhere from like 50 to 100 lineups with some of these stacks that I like. I'll put it in tournament mode. I'll do a couple of unique players. I'll do all kinds of settings, like disallow more than one pass catcher from the same team unless it's stacked with a quarterback. You can think about flex positions. Typically, the Milli Maker, you don't really win with a running back in the flex, so I will kind of zero that out most weeks unless, there's a ton of value on the slate that week for running back, and I feel like maybe it is a running back in the flex week. So all those things considered, ran through a lot of different stacks. The one that I really liked is that Tennessee and Indy game. So a lot of different ways to go with it. I think obviously Derrick Henry, you got to have some exposure to him because he can go off on any slate, even though the Colts have the number 1 rush defense. Henry, I think is coming to like 13-14% ownership, which not exactly low, but for a player of the caliber of Henry, it is low. So I'll have some exposure to him, but in the Milli Maker this week, I do like this lineup that went through the optimal. So got Ryan Tannehill, obviously, and you have to do a stack with at least one of his pass catchers. We got Julio Jones out this week. So we got A.J. Brown. Right now, what I'm seeing with roster percentage projections, 9%. So I do like A.J. Brown at that. We'll see, where this is tomorrow, but I'm going to roll with that right now. Michael Pittman, again, he's a beast. He's actually a lot higher roster percentage, but he's 5,300 versus 6,900 in a game that, a lot of people are going to be looking to stack. So not very surprising. And then the good thing about Ryan Tannehill in this stack, in this game stack of 1 and 1, is Tannehill is only looking at like 2.5%. So I really like that. Plus the salary is $6,600. So quite cheap for quarterback. And then you got James Robinson and Daryl Henderson. Daryl Henderson is in an absolute smash spot. The Rams going against Houston. I mean, if you're ever going to play a running back, you play a talented running back like Daryl Henderson, who, is going against a team that they should basically curb stomp. It's a big spread. And Henderson didn't smash last week, but the opportunities were there. So I believe he got like 81% of the snaps, 62% of the carries, and still 10 targets. So it's perfect time to go back to him. Even though he's chalk, I've differentiated the lineup enough that, that would be willing to play him. And really, it's the Texans. So he should get tons of work, and he definitely has the ceiling to get there. So got him, and then James Robinson going against Seattle. Geno Smith led Seattle. So they finally got smart with James Robinson. First couple of weeks, he wasn't getting the uses he wanted. Obviously, Bourbon Meyer, drinking too much whiskey, grinding up on people at the bar, blondes at the bar, doing his thing. He's just drunk when he wasn't playing in the first couple of weeks enough, just plain and simple. So James Robinson has been crushing it lately, and it's a good game script. I really like him this week. They are favored in that game. And then the one-offs. So for the wide receivers, Keenan Allen going against the Patriots. So we talked about in the Fantasy Fling podcast, Herbert has, last year, as a rookie, Belichick gave him a lot of issues. So he's not a cash play for me. But I will have a lot of exposures to Herbert and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and some Jared Cook in tournaments, because they're coming in a low ownership, and he's a beast. So I like Keenan Allen this week, 6,500, 8% ownership. James Robinson, actually, I got quite a stack going on here now that I look at it. James Robinson, Dan Arnold, we talked about in Fantasy League podcast, he's 2,800, and Lawrence those target tight ends, and then Jaguars D going against Geno Smith. Now, this is going to be cheaper than I would roll in the Milli Maker. Normally, you want 3,000 plus, but the matchup is good, and there's enough high-priced wide receivers and great matchups and stacks this week that I feel like, those averages are averages. They're not accounting for outliers. Outliers do happen, so maybe this could be a lower price defensive week. So James Robinson, Dan Arnold, Jaguars D, and Chris Godwin. I have to have Brady, some piece of Brady's offense this week. You got no Antonio Brown. They're going against New Orleans. That's one of the higher game totals, 49.5, and Brady just likes to flex on people. So Evans, I believe, is going to probably get the Marshawn Lattimore treatment this week. So we got Godwin. Tyler Johnson's in play as a punt play. And then Gronk is back. So, like those guys. This is my lineup. Total, Tannehill, James Robinson, Daryl Henderson, Pittman, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, Arnold, Godwin, Jaguars D. I believe it has the ceiling to get there. And it certainly has stacks if those games go off as we project, as we hope. And coming in at basically 89% ownership. So, 6 out of 7 weeks has been under 95%. I'll roll with that. Nice. I like it. Yeah. Eric, do you have your lineup built?
I do. I was tinkering around. I was what do they call in the league? I was roster baiting a little too much. Roster baiting. Yeah. I made quite a few changes while you were talking. Probably a bunch of them. I was trying to fit players in, and I couldn't get some guys in, but I'm okay. I like the final lineup. I'm wondering if the ceiling is, I don't know if it's high enough, but the crazy things can happen. So I drew the Buffalo Miami stack, which we talked about. Buffalo is a projected to win. Basically, that 32 to 17 is basically what the projection is. So it's supposed to be a slaughter. So we'll see how that happens. But Buffalo is one of the teams where it seems like even when they have a lead, kind of like Tampa, they still just throw the ball. They still just put their foot on their throat and keep. I know they're. I don't know if you ever saw their. I forget the name of the head coach, but he was a former wrestler, pretty good wrestler too. And I think he's got that mentality, like don't let up.
Ever. Not so.
He was a collegiate wrestler. He was pretty good, man. I forget his what he did, but anyway, I feel like that's where that mentality comes from. You can kind of see it in him. But so I did Buffalo, Miami. So I went with I don't trust the Buffalo D is really good, so I stayed away from Miami in this game. So I started with Josh Allen and Emmanuel Sanders and Stephon Diggs. Those are the stack in there. I was debating on either Sanders or Cole Beasley because I feel like it could be a toss-up between either of those two, but I just feel like Sanders is the better player.
I like
he has a higher ceiling.
I like it.
So, yeah, Josh Allen, Diggs, and Emmanuel Sanders for the stack. For the running backs, we talked about this earlier, and I was already pretty decided on it, but I think James Robinson is going to have a great game. I know he's highly owned, but I couldn't get him out of my lineup. I had to keep him in there. It was between him and Swift. Swift was more expensive, so I had to keep Robinson in to make the others work. But the other guy I have, I don't know if his ceiling's high enough, but I was going to take the shot is Kenneth Gainwell. He's going to be – they don't run the ball much, so everything he does is pretty much going to be catching passes. They like to do that little arrow route, and he likes to throw that to him a lot when they're near the end zone. So without Miles Sanders, I have Kenny Gainwell. He's only $5,000. And then the other guy in that game as well is Devonta Smith. I've watched a fair amount of their games, and it's been almost every single game where he's missed him on a long pass where it would have made the whole week look completely different. He is, man. He has a huge target share. And if he hurts a little bit better of a quarterback, I think Smith would have a much better season. But it only takes one or two of those to connect, and the Detroit's defense not great. I did end up with the same tight end as you. I have the Dan Arnold. That price was really good. I was kind of going back between him and Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah.
I kind of liked him because Ebron's out, Juju's out.
Mm-hmm.
They basically have, Deontay and Claypool.
Yeah.
And then in my flex, I ended up going Godwin as well. It's hard to pass up on him. I feel like usually when Tampa plays the Saints, they usually have Lattimore on Evans, so it feels like that frees up Godwin. And he's still really well priced. And then for defense, I kind of punted it a little bit, but, I picked the Washington football team, and they're 2,100. They're like one of the cheapest ones. And I only picked that because I've been watching – I live here in Denver, and I watch every Bronco game, and I'm not sure if Jekyll or Hyde's going to show up. So,
yeah,
they're only 2,100, so it doesn't take much to 6X that.
Washington football team, yeah.
But, yeah, it's kind of the one I punted just to try to make everyone else fit in my lineup. So, again, going through, I have Josh Allen as my quarterback. I have James Robinson and Kenny Gainwell. I have Emmanuel Sanders and Diggs and Devonta Smith. Dan Arnold is the tight end. Godwin is the flex. And the WFT is the defense.
Yeah,
that's what I was saying. I was a little worried about my ceiling.
You don't know.
Just a little bit. But,
yeah,
we'll see how it goes. But I ended up getting the players that I wanted in there, so I'm pretty happy with it.
No doubt. All right, well, let's go on to the stack studs and sleepers portion of it. Building a lineup, but we're widening it. This is for GPPs, maybe not necessarily the Milli Maker, but who we like for some GPP stacks. Obviously, if you're building one lineup, you can't cover everything. So,
yep.
I'll start it out, and then I'll let you finish, Eric. Some of the stacks I like.
Good.
You basically nailed one for me in your build. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders. Now, Stephon Diggs, I believe, is going to get Howard covering him. Mm-hmm. He's a stud. Diggs is a stud. So, studs, as you've seen in the past, it doesn't mean they're going to have a bad day. They could just be on their A game that day and they can still produce. But so whether it be Diggs or Emmanuel, or maybe you do Emmanuel and Beasley, or you kind of really punt at the tight end and you go with Sweeney. I do like that stack. And this week, I don't really think you necessarily have to bring it back, as we've seen. You don't always have to bring it back. You can just do a team stack and then target other games. So maybe you bring it back with Waddle, maybe you bring it back with Gesicki. But regardless, I like that stack. I talked about it. Tannehill, AJ Brown. That said, that game I'm going to try to stack every which way. So maybe I do Tannehill, maybe I do AJ Brown, maybe bring it back with Pittman, or maybe I bring it back with Jonathan Taylor. So, or I go on the Wentz side of that. But in a lot of the lineups that I did, I got Tannehill, I got AJ Brown. It is possible to do a Tannehill, AJ Brown, Derrick Henry as well. Moving on, Stafford, Kupp, Woods, and Van Jefferson. Now, Deshaun Jackson wants to trade. So Van Jefferson, he seems to be getting more looks. He slides in there. He's only 3,900, so I like him. And then again, that is just like they're going to stop the Texans, so they're going to score points. Who's it going to be? You could do Stafford, you can do Kupp, you can do Henderson. Maybe just leave it alone with that. You don't have to bring it back. I'm probably not bringing it back with anyone. I just don't like it. So
yeah, I don't think Deshaun Jackson is even going to play. Usually when the teams agree, people already know they know what Deshaun Jackson is. They don't have to display him. So I bet they're probably not going to let him play just to keep him healthy in case he gets somebody does inquire about him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes I like to showcase him, but
Yeah. He's so fragile. I'm wondering if they know he's
exactly.
fast.
Exactly. A couple other ones. Herbert, Williams. I really like that stack. I got to have some exposure to that. They're just coming to low ownership, and they're just beasts. And then obviously Brady. We talked about earlier. Stack Brady with Godwin, with Gronk. Cameron Brate last week. He got several targets. Brady's missing his tight end. And then Tyler Johnson, just because he's such a punt at like 3,100. So studs. With some of these guys we talked about, I got James Robinson, I got Jonathan Taylor, Andre Swift. So they give up a lot of points to opposing running backs. So I like Swift this week. Daryl Henderson, we talked about him. A.J. Brown, Godwin, Williams. And then another guy I really haven't talked a whole lot about him, except that is kind of a sneaky game that we like. Atlanta versus Carolina. So really at 6,600, he's due for a big week. He's getting a lot of targets. He had a tough matchup last week. It's not nearly as tough this week. So like him. And then I'm going to round it out with sleepers. Elijah Mitchell, he's the number one running back in the offense. Sad about that because I was heavy on Sermon this year in both redraft and dynasty, but is what it is. 5,400, pretty good matchup. Khalil Herbert, you talked about this week. Nagy's out this week. If you're a smart offensive coordinator, just run the fucking football. Give Khalil Herbert the ball. He looks good.
I hope they just crush. I hope they put up like 35 points, and they're like, oh, we don't need Nagy.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you, and I mean, dude, Khalil Herbert is coming in like roster percentage 6%.
I love him.
Ceiling projection over DFS Army is like 27, so I like him. A couple other guys, Laviska Shenault in that Jacksonville Seattle game, and mainly because he's coming in low. He's like 6%, roster percentage 24, ceiling projection 24 fantasy points. So he could do well. He's kind of the forgotten. He's just crazy talented. He got 10 targets last week, so maybe this is a game he goes off. Again, when I'm looking at sleepers, it's like 5K range and under. So Laviska's only 4,700. Russell Gage had a great week last week, got a lot of target share. His highest of the season, coming in at 4% ownership. Van Jefferson, same thing. We talked about him. And then Tyler Johnson as well. These guys are 2% minus total roster percentage. So, and cheap, punts and stacks. These are guys you want. You're not playing really on them as a one-off, but in stacks, Van Jefferson with a Stafford and Tyler Johnson with Brady. Those are my stacks, my studs, my sleepers.
I like it, man. I like it. We definitely have some overlap. I mean, as expected.
Yeah.
Doing this podcast together, we're gonna have some overlap for sure.
Buddy.
First one I had on there was one you'd already talked about, the Allen Diggs or Allen Manuel Sanders. Another one I came across was Matt Ryan and Ridley. Ryan seems to be playing a lot better, and Ridley gets 10 plus targets every single game since week 1. He had 8, but after that, every game. I mean, it's not that the talent's out there. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully they figure it out. But I also had the Stafford / Kupp or Van Jefferson stack. If you want to get a little crazy, and go nuts. Heineke's super cheap. And he's put against defenses that aren't that great. His ceiling's about 30 points. He did that against the Falcons. And everyone knows McLaurin he's part of my studs, but he's part of that stack as well. I know that one's kind of risky, But the Broncos D isn't. They're not bad, but they're not great. They're not as good as I thought they would be on paper. Some of the studs we're talking about. I have Khalil Herbert in there. I guess he's more of a sleeper, but I think the guy's a beast. But Swift and A.J. Brown, McLaurin, Jonathan Taylor, James Robinson. I think those guys are all in great positions this week. Some of the sleepers I have, I did have, go figure, they're my defense, the Washington football team. I also have Jerry Jeudy. He's super cheap. He's 4,900, and the Broncos are in a win now. They're 3-4. If they lose again, they might be in. They're in a bad spot. So if he's healthy and he's feeling okay, they're going to do anything possible to win. And there's no question that Jerry Jeudy is a stud. That guy's a beast. But he's only 4,900, so I have him under sleepers because we don't know if they're going to ease him in the game or if they're going to just let him go all out or what they're going to do.
Yeah,
but
he's a good GPP play. No cash consideration with him sitting out, but GPP for sure.
I mean, he gets a lot of those underpasses, and since Draftkings is full PPR, that helps a lot. He gets a lot of short stuff. Mm-hmm. Michael Carter, another guy that's under 5,000. He after the bye week, he seemed to get a big uptick in usage. I guess we'll see if that stays, but it's likely that the game script they're going to be playing from behind, which probably means a lot of checkdowns from. If anything's like the previous game, Mike White checked down to him a bunch when he came to take over for Zach Wilson. And then if you really want to take a dart throw, man, you and I talked about this before the podcast, but David Johnson, 4,200. Mark Ingram's gone. Likely negative game script. If he gets 8-10 receptions or something like that, that would be pretty awesome. But it's definitely a swing for the fences type play. But 4,200 for David Johnson's cheap.
It's disgusting, as Blender HD would say, that they're a daily fan.
I didn't even know he's that's hilarious, man.
But he said he gets receptions. Ingram's gone. It's possible play. It's super dirt cheap. Why not?
Yeah, man. And I guess the other guy, it was a guy I talked about in the stack. I'm not saying that he's super talented, but Heineke is 5,300. Like I said, I look at his game log against defenses that are not great, he puts up 23 to 27 points. I'm sure he could do 30. He seems to run a lot. I think 30 is probably his ceiling, but if you look at the winner last week, Stafford put up 30. So it doesn't always have to be like a 50-point game. That's what I have for stacks, studs, and sleepers. We had some overlap and some differing, but that's where we're at.
I like it. Well, let's answer a few questions in here. So you're more of a redraft dynasty guy than me. I mean, I play those too, but my focus for the past couple of years has shifted to DFS, so I don't do as much. I'll start with the DFS question, and then I can pull these up and let you respond to some of these. So, is there a limit on how many times they can bet on DraftKings? Are we talking DFS? We talking Milli Maker? You can play in the Milli Maker 150 times. So you can max enter the Milli Maker 150 times at $20. It's only $3,000 a week. If you want to get real silly, you can do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different tournaments, GPPs that you can do multi-entry on.
Yeah,
a lot of people actually do that, and it's crazy to see. Sometimes some guy will be like first, third, fifth, seventh. If you just had a really good stack.
For sure. What do you think? What do you think about this? So should I trade Lockett for Kenneth Gainwell? My question would be, who are your wide receivers? Gainwell went on IR today. I'm sorry, Miles Sanders went on IR, so he will be out at least 3 games. I would say, who are your receivers? Who are your running backs?
Right, everything.
Russell Wilson will be coming back soon, so that's something to keep in mind.
To me, that's a no. I mean, unless you're in desperate need of running backs, because if you look at his numbers before Russell got hurt, the guy's he's a borderline wide receiver 1, probably more of a wide receiver 2, but. For me, in a vacuum, because we don't know what you need or what you don't, I would say no.
Right, and maybe consider trading Lockett for someone else.
It's tough to trade Lockett right now because of with Russell being out. I mean, if you want to trade him, it might be too late, but when Russell comes back and has a big game, that would be the time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe wait until they play the Jaguars when maybe Lockett might go off and then try to trade him. Sell high. Other guys said Gesicki and Miles Sanders for Chenault, Michael Carter, and Goddard. Yeah, dude, I would do that because literally.
What was it for who? Chenault, Michael Carter, and who?
Jasicki and Sanders for Chenault, Michael Carter, and Goddard. I would do that before he can change his mind once he finds out that Miles Sanders is out for 3 games.
Yeah. Well, plus, like I was talking about earlier, Michael Carter seemed like a lot of times that happens with rookies after the bye week. They seem to get an uptick in usage. If you look back in the years that happens, and it looks like he's the lead back now. I think he had 65% of the touches last week compared to like 35% in the previous weeks. I would definitely take the side with Michael Carter.
By the way, he says he's getting Miles Sanders' side, so go ahead and deny that. PPR, Scary Terry and Eckler for Calvin Ridley and Jonathan Taylor. Oof, that's a tough trade.
Can you put that up there?
Eckler. Yeah.
Thank you.
PPR, Terry and Eckler for Calvin Ridley and Jonathan Taylor. That's a very balanced trade. I honestly don't know how either side really ends up disappointed. Eckler is a great receiving back, obviously, more so than Jonathan Taylor. But Calvin Ridley is going to get probably more targets every week than Terry McLaurin, just based on having a better quarterback, Matt Ryan versus Heineke. What do you think about that one, Eric?
Yeah, I like the Ridley Jonathan Taylor side. It's not like a huge swing, but for a couple reasons. One, as we talked about, I love Terry McLaurin, he's a beast, but Ridley has already had his bye as well, so that's one less thing you have to worry about.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor, another thing that I take into consideration is Eckler. I think he's had, what was the stat? I think he's only had 160 carries. I think he's only had 160 touches the most in a season because he seems to get hurt pretty often. And Jonathan Taylor had literally said he's never missed a high school or college or NFL game. So just for those reasons, I think I would take Calvin Ridley and Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that one. It's close, but that's the side I would lean. And then last one, 16-team league, trade Khalil Herbert, Gallup, Rashad Penny, and Jeff Wilson to a 6-1 team who needs points now for David Johnson, Hunt, and Ingram. David Johnson, Kareem Hunt, and Ingram. Also have Kamara. So excited to get the handcuff. I'm taking Khalil Herbert, Gallup. He's coming off IR soon, right? And Penny and Jeff Wilson. So 4-3.
David Johnson, Hunt, and Ingram. I don't really love David Johnson. As more of like, I don't know. I just don't think he's David Johnson that we know. And Ingram is kind of the same. It's kind of tough, but I kind of like if you watch Khalil Herbert on film, I think even when Montgomery comes back, he's going to split carries with them. But because it's just in a vacuum and you got a handcuff and you got what you wanted, I think that's fine. I think it was more based on needs. Gallup is supposed to come back this week. Rashad Penny, he doesn't ever seem to play. Even when he does play, he gets hurt after a week or two. I've been, as a 0 RB type of guy, I've been on him for years and it's never panned out. And Jeff Wilson, that's kind of just a toss-up. So you're kind of basically, for me, giving up Herbert and Gallup for David Johnson, Hunt, and Ingram. So I think that's a good trade because if Hunt comes back, he's the winner of that trade because of him. Or when he comes back, rather. So I like it. I don't have an issue with it.
Well, I think that's going to do it. For week 8, making a Milli, and then we'll see how we do, of course. Next week we'll get Paul back. Hopefully he won't drink too much whiskey on a Friday night. And, we get back to the gauntlet between the 3 of us.
I didn't read the text. Did he actually say he drank too much?
He did not say he drank too much.
Oh, not feeling great today.
Did he drank too much? Yeah.
Yep. Guarantee that's what happened.
Yeah, that's what happened for sure. Well, awesome. Thank you for joining.
Appreciate all the questions from everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't mind answering some season-long and dynasty questions here and there.
Because I'm in quite a few of them, so yeah.
Eric should go too high on that, but want some DFS questions too. So good luck, everyone, and we will see you week 9.
See ya.